All right, there we're on record now. Once again, we begin our Shiur with Kol Yisrael Yesh Lehem Chelik Le'olam Haba. All of Israel has a share in the world to come. Shenemar, as it says, Va'amech Kulam Tzadikim La'olam Yirshu Oretz. They shall forever inherit the land. Neitzer Matoi, they are the branch of my planting, says Hashem. Maaseh Yodai Lehispaya, they are the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. We are in the middle of Mishnah Vav, in the organization that I have in front of me. And of course, it is the Mishnah that's called Mishnah Hey on this Machzor that's in front of us. Hu HaYa Omer, talking about Hillel, and we learned the beginning of this. Ein Bor Yirei Chet, an empty person will not fear sin. V'lo Amo Aretz Chassid, an ignoramus can't be a pious person. V'lo Habai Shen Lamed, a person who is embarrassed or ashamed to ask will never learn. And that's where we got up to in full explanation. We're going to go further today with the words V'lo HaKapdon Melamed, and someone who is very much of a quick to anger type person, and he has a temper, and he was very strict and doesn't allow people to ask questions. He can't be a good teacher. V'lo kol hamarbe b'schor ramachkim. And not all who are involved in business are going to become wise. Uvemakom she'en anoshim, and in a place where there are no men, ishtadei lihiyos ish, you should endeavor to be a person. Where they're lacking people to stand up and say what's right, you've got to stand up and say what's right. There is an interesting derech avos, which takes apart the beginning of the Mishnah and the end of the Mishnah, and it says, we learned that Hillel said, Lo habai shan lamed, someone who is an embarrassed type person, or he's too afraid to ask questions, he's ashamed, he's mevayesh, he is embarrassed or ashamed to ask questions, he can't learn. Hillel was talking from experience, because the Gemara in Yuma on Lamed Hey comes along and says that there was a time when Hillel wanted to learn, and he didn't have the wherewithal to get into the Beis Medrash. It required an entrance fee to come and learn. I guess it was like a dues to help the upkeep of the shul, of the Beis Medrash, and he didn't have the entrance fee. But it didn't stop him. The Gemara relates that he went on top of the roof where there was a skylight, and he put his ear to the skylight and was listening as the shiur was going on. The Gemara relates that a heavy snow fell, and the people looked up, and they saw the image of a person lying on the skylight. And they ran up, and they found that Hillel was almost frozen to death. So Hillel was someone who was not ashamed to learn. He said, if I can't get in, I'm going to go on the skylight, I'm going to learn that way. So that's why he said, Lo habai shan lamed. When it came to Lo hakapdon melamed, the famous story in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Lamed Aleph, which we recently learned in the Daf Yomi, about the man who came to Hillel. The most famous story, everybody quotes all over the place, is that a man came to Shammai and he asked him to teach him the whole Torah while he stands on one foot. And Shammai said, come on, you're not serious. And he chased him out. You can't learn the whole Torah while you're on one foot. This is something that, he's just mocking. So he threw him out. When he came to Hillel, Hillel said, okay, you ready? He said, yes. He says, okay, stand on one foot. I'm going to teach you the whole Torah. So he stood up on one foot, and Hillel told him, what's hateful to you, don't do to your friend. All the Mefarshim talk about the fact that he said it to him in the negative way. What's hateful to you, don't do to your friend. Why didn't he say, that's not our discussion. But Hillel was someone who was not a kapdan. He was not someone who got angry when he was asked a question, but he had patience for the person. And he said, okay, what's hateful to you, don't do to your friend. Zeh kol HaTorah, that's the whole Torah. V'idach perusha. The rest is explanation of how to get to that point. Zil gemor, go and learn. That was the most famous story. The truth of the matter is, there's a more famous, But the preceding story is really, really interesting. It's a fascinating study in Hillel's patience. A man comes to Hillel. Actually, it's the story after, not before. The man comes to Hillel, to Shammai, and he says, how many Torahs are there? So he said, well, there's two Torahs. There's a Torah Shebiksav and the Torah Shebal Peh. So the man said, I'll tell you what, teach me the Torah Shebiksav, that I accept, but I don't accept the Torah Shebal Peh. So Shammai said, you're not serious. You're making a mockery over here. He chased him out. He comes to Hillel, and he says to Hillel, how many Torahs are there? So Hillel says, there's two Torahs, Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. So the man says, okay, I'm willing to become a frum Jew if you teach me Torah Shebiksav. I'll buy into the written Torah because, it's not the game of telephone, so mistakes can be made. Here it's written, so I'll take that, and I'll agree to observe that. Now, teach me. So Hillel said, you only want to take the written Torah? He says, yeah. He says, okay, it's a deal. You ready for the first lesson? So the man says, yeah. He says, okay, here's the first lesson. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. Want you to go home, study that order. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, come back tomorrow for the next lesson. Next day he comes back, says the Gemara, and the man comes in, he says, I'm ready for lesson number 2. He says, okay. Now he takes and points to the letters, and he says, he points at the Aleph, then at the Beis, then at the Gimel, and then at the Daled, and he points at the Aleph and he says, Daled. He points at the Beis, and he says, Gimel. He points at the Gimel, he says, Beis. He points to the Daled and he says, Aleph. Daled, Beis, Gimel, Aleph. So the man says, wait a minute. Yesterday you told me this is Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. Now you're telling me Daled, Gimel, Beis, Aleph. So Hillel says, how'd you know I was right yesterday? How did you know that that's the right way? How do you know that Aleph, Beis is that way? You know how you know? Because I told you. That's Torah Shebal Peh. In other words, said Hillel, there is no Torah Shebiksav without the Torah Shebal Peh. You don't know the first Aleph. You don't know anything except what I told you. Otherwise, you'd never know. No one knows anything except by virtue of Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, and being told. And therefore, Hillel didn't get angry at him. And therefore, he said, Lo hakapton melamed. A person who is going to get angry will never teach, because he taught this person and he became a ben Torah. He became someone who built a good house. And then it says, V'lo kol amara b'schora makim. Not everybody who gets involved deeply in business becomes wise, because the Gemara in Sota, Chaf Aleph, tells us about Hillel had a brother Shevna. Now, as much as Hillel was a gadol b'Torah of a year Shemayim, his brother Shevna was a fruma yid, no question about it. But he was involved totally in business. He devoted his life to becoming a wealthy person, and he succeeded. He was quite wealthy, one of the richest men around. As life progressed and he got older, he turned into himself and looked at himself and said, what have I accomplished in life? Look at my brother Hillel. Look at what he's accomplished and look what I've accomplished. So he went to Hillel, he said, Hillel, I realize now, towards the end of our lives, I realize that what you did is worth a lot, because you're going to have something to take with you. I'll make a deal with you. I'll give you half my wealth if you give me half of your schusim. That's what I want. And the Gemara relates that based on this deal that he wanted to make, based on a pasuk in Shiur Hashirim, it says that in Perek Ches, in pasuk, I believe it's pasuk Zion, it says over there, Im yitain ish melo veso, even if a person will give all the money in the world, boz yavuzulo, he's going to squander it. I don't care about it, because ultimately I want to have the schora that you take with you. And that's what happened with Hillel. And so he said, V'lo kol hamar b'schora machkim. Let's go into a little more depth about V'lo hakapton melamed. Someone who is strict with students is not going to be able to teach. The Gemara in Erevin tells the story of Rav Preda. Rav Preda had a student that was a little difficult to teach. He didn't get it the first time. In fact, he was so slow to get it that Rav Preda said to him, listen, I don't care how many times I have to teach it to you. If I have to repeat it 400 times, I will. I will teach it to you 400 times until you get it. I'm willing to review it. As long as you want to learn, I'll continue to review it. So he started teaching him 400 times. When he finished, so the student said, I'm sorry, Rebbe, but I didn't get it, you see, because halfway through, someone came to the door and he asked the shaila, and you went and answered the shaila, and you came back after you answered it. And so I didn't get it 400 straight times. I only had it 200 times. And I didn't quite chop it. I'm sorry, but I didn't get it. Rav Preda didn't get upset. He said, okay, let's do it again. And he did it again 400 times. Now, this is, of course, a guzma. Guzma means it's an exaggeration. Because when you use numbers like 400 times in the Gemara, it meant it's an exaggeration. But the idea was there. Rav Preda reviewed it another 400 times. The Gemara relates that a baskol came out, a voice of heaven came out and said to Rav Preda, I'm going to give you you have two choices to choose a reward. Two choices. The choices are either you become an extremely wealthy man, or everyone in your door, everyone in your generation is going to be zoche la'olam haba. You have a choice to pick one of those two prizes for all that you've done. And the Gemara relates, Rav Preda said, I'll take that everybody goes to Olam Haba. And the Baskol came out and said, you chose well, I'm going to give you both. What a great story. The point is that when you review and you don't get upset, you're not a kapton, you're going to be able to be melamed. If somebody asks it to you, repeat it again, try to clarify it a different way. Keep trying to get the understanding if you can. And if the person ultimately gets it, so there's going to be a tremendous amount of reward, both for the person who gets it and for the person who's teaching it. And of course, if someone is a kapton, then it's impossible for the person to teach, because the students are not going to ask. They're going to be afraid that if you say the wrong thing, you're going to get it in the neck, so to speak. And they're not going to be able to ask questions. Now, we just learned that Hillel said, Lo hakapton melamed, that someone who is, a little strict is not going to be able to be a good teacher. The Gemara is a case in Ksubas on Daf Kuf Gimel over there, and Kuf Gimel over Beis, it's talking about Rebbe. Rebbe was about to take leave of this world. The Gemara relates in Tzipori, and Rebbe Yehuda Nasi and Rebbe Yossi were there, and Rebbe called his children in while he was on his last breaths, and he wanted to instruct his children about the future. So he called in his oldest son, Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel, Rebbe Yehuda, became the Nasi after Rebbe Yehuda. Rebbe Yehuda Nasi was the prince. Rabbi Gamliel, from the family of David HaMelech, the son of Rebbe Yehuda Nasi, became the prince. So when he called Rabbi Gamliel in, Rebbe Yehuda said, I have advice for you when you become the Nasi. Zerok mara b'talmidim. I want you to throw bitterness at your students. They should fear you. I want them to fear you. So throw bitterness at your students. So the Tiferes Yisrael, the commentary on the Mishnayos, asks the question here by this Mishnah. Here it says, Lo hakapton melamed, that Hillel said that someone who's a strict person won't be able to teach. And yet Rebbe Yehuda Nasi came along and said, Zerok mara b'talmidim, cast some bitterness at your students that they should fear you. How do you reconcile the two statements? Okay, so the Gemara over there goes into a discussion about Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, that whenever anybody would come to him, he would hug them and kiss them, and he was very pleasant with them. How could he do that if you're supposed to Zerok Moral Talmidim? So the Gemara answers, it's simple. When you're in front of all the Talmidim together, they should all be in awe of the Rebbe. But on a personal level, like Yehoshaphat, you have to hug them and kiss them and let them know individually that you love them and care for them. And what Hillel was talking about was a person who never changes, but even in private, reacts to the Talmidim with abdonus. That's the kind of person who will never teach. That's one explanation. But the Tiferes Yisrael takes the words of the Gemara and analyzes them and comes up with an absolutely on-the-spot beautiful pshat. He says, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said, Zerok, Moral Talmidim. The word Zerok means throw bitterness at your students. Now, when you throw something, it doesn't get there right away. It doesn't get there until a period of time goes by, even if it's a short period. But you're throwing it. Says that the Tiferes Yisrael, what Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi meant was, maybe when you walk into the room, you have to have a self-confidence and a certain type of awesomeness about you in order to be able to teach that everyone should look upon you with great respect. But by the time the Mora gets to them, already the Mora is gone. The bitterness is gone. You only have to be Zerok. You only throw it. But that's not who you really are. Who you really are comes out, and you really have to be Makar of them. And that's what Hillel meant when he said, Velo hakapdan lamed. He says later on that not only is it so that you'll be able to teach the students, but if someone is a kapdan, if someone is a personal, very strict and very standoffish and hard to approach Rebbe, the students are going to learn bad midos. They're going to learn not good character traits. It's not good to demonstrate kapdonos because you can't teach them how to be a mensch if their lives are surrounded by anger and the Rebbe is so strict with them. In fact, if a student ultimately doesn't learn, he may end up blaming it on his Rebbe. Oh, if they would have talked nice to me, it would have been a different story. And there are many, many, many examples of that in our history. And I'm sure some of our people listening can relate to the age-old practice that some Rebbes had, that they used the Frask approach. You know what the Frask approach is. You see, going like this and hitting somebody is a patch. But when you take a wind up and give with the backhand, that's a Frask. So they used to use the Frask approach. And many a student was turned off by that. And therefore, you're not supposed to be a captain. And not only that, but when someone gets angry, you make mistakes. And you're going to teach the wrong thing. And therefore, Hillel said, Velo hakapton melamed. Let's go just very quickly to the next line, which says, Velo kol amarbe b'schora machkim. Not everyone who is marbe, increases, being only in business, not always does such a person become wise. Now, the Gemara in Tainus on Chaf Aleph has a story about Rabbi Yochanan and Ilfa. Rabbi Yochanan and Ilfa were very, very poor. They had nothing to eat. And they were chavrusis. And they learned together. The famous Rabbi Yochanan. And he was going with Ilfa. They decided, that's it. We have to go into business. We have to go make money. Because the Torah says that there shouldn't be, people who are destitute and have to come on to others. So we're going to go and we're going to make money. And they went out and they started their travels. And they stopped to eat along the way. They brought along sandwiches and they sat down by a fence to enjoy their lunch. And while they were sitting there, Rabbi Yochanan hears of two voices. And one says to the other, let's take the fence and throw it on them. These people are leaving Chaye Olam in order to get Chaye Sha'ah. They're leaving the everlasting life of the Torah world in order to get temporary, momentary wealth. Shrouds have no pockets. So what are they doing? So one said to the other, you know what? Let's throw the wall on them. This fence, we'll throw it on them. That'll be the end of them. And that'll be it. And the other one said, yeah, but one of them is going to become a great, great man. If we throw the wall on him, he will never have that chance. I don't want to throw the wall on them. At that point, Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, hey, Ilfa, did you hear anything? Ilfa says, no, I heard nothing. So Rabbi Yochanan said to himself, oh, so if he didn't hear and I heard, it must mean that the message was for me. And that means I'm the one who can end up being something. If that's the case, I really can't go to business. I'm going to go back to the yeshiva. See, he wakes up, so to speak, and he says to Ilfa, listen, Ilfa, you want to go, you go make your fortune. I'm going back to the yeshiva. So Ilfa went to make his fortune, and Rabbi Yochanan went back to the yeshiva. Years later, Ilfa came back after he made a lot of money. And he came back. And Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara says, Kvar Molach Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan already became the king. When it said he became the king, it meant he became the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva is like a king. And all the world was in awe of Rabbi Yochanan. And when Ilfa got back, he heard a voice that said, Ilfa, had you gone back to learn, you would have been greater than Rabbi Yochanan. He would not be the king. You would be the king. So the Gemara relates that Ilfa went out and walked the plank. He got on a ship and went to the end of the ship and hung on the yard arm that hangs over the sea. And he hung on to it and he said, if anyone can ask me a question from any Mishnah, actually he said from any Brisa, from any Brisa, if anyone can ask me a question from any Brisa, and I can't refute it by bringing a Mishnah, I'm letting go and I'll drown in the sea. And no one was able to refute one bit of learning that Ilfa ever knew, because he remembered everything, he knew everything. So the Gemara asks, if he knew everything, how come he wasn't Taka the Rosh Yeshiva? The answer is because he did learn nothing more than what he had when he left. He had a lot. He was a big Talmud Chacham. But lo kol amar bebeschora machkim. He never made himself better than he was. And that's what Hillel meant to say. Everyone has to make a parnasa. And it's perfectly reasonable for every one of us to go to work. Every single one of us has a responsibility to provide for ourselves and our families. There's no question. You also have to provide, I'll just throw this in if you don't mind, a little commercial break. You also have to provide for the shul. Shouldn't forget the shul. But at the same time, you shouldn't give up on the learning. You should continually try to grow. Because Hillel is saying, if you really want to be wise, if you want to get better in wisdom, even though you'll be very successful in business, but wisdom will not come your way. You'll be missing out on some of the wisdom of the Torah. And that's what Hillel meant to say. V'lo kol hamar, but not all who increase in schora are getting wise. There are some who do, by the way. There are some who go to business, and the fact that they're in business does not take away from their increase in wisdom. Why? Because they focus a good part of their energies on Torah study. So even though they do very well, and that's why it says, Instead of saying v'lo hamarbe b'schor hamakim, it doesn't say someone, not someone who increases in business doesn't get wise. No, that's not what it says. It says v'lo kol hamarbe b'schor hamakim. Not everyone who is in buying and selling gets wise. Some who are involved in business, they do get machkim. They do get wisdom because they focus their energies on the Torah study. They go to work, they work their hours, they do their ishtadlus, and the rest of the time, they're learning, they're growing, they're going to a shiur, they're teaching a shiur, they're learning a shiur, they're reading a sefer, they're doing something, they're coming to Pirkei Avos on Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday and Thursday nights. They come to the shiur in the shul when Yetz Hashem will be open on Shabbos. They come in the morning, they come in the evening. They're machkim because their tafkid in life, their goal in life is to supply the basic parnasa, but not at the expense of losing out on their chachma. And Yetz Hashem, tomorrow night, we'll finish up this particular Mishnah where it says, Uvamakom she'ein anoshim, in a place where there are no men, and it means, doesn't mean males, it means someone who is a gavra, a person who can accomplish something. Uvamakom she'ein anoshim ishtadel liyosish, in a place where there are no human beings who are outstanding, you should be making your business to become an ish milchama Hashem Shemo. Okay, so we are now going, by the way, before we end, I did make a little bit of a commercial message, but it wouldn't be a bad idea if we went another step further. Anyone who'd like to sponsor any of these Pirkei Avos Shiurim, it's a wonderful thing, l'zecher nishmas, or for the sake of helping the shul, because after all, we're not there. And people, out of sight, out of mind sometimes. And the shul has lost, the continuance that we have when we're all there. And we want to make sure that it's all there when we get back. So if you'd like to sponsor this or any other shiur, please let me know. Certainly can do that. Be a wonderful thing. And we urge you to remember we had, we said Yizkar to remember from the past Yom Tov, and in general, all of these shiurim and all the Torah learned that we do is due to the continuance of what goes on in the shul. All right, we're ready to go right now to the Mishnayos. Everyone's welcome to stay with us and join with us. We're in Mishnayos Kalim. We're in Perik Yud Tes, and we're about to start that right now.